So today I want to talk about what is hypnosis and what it actually isn't, because there are a lot of ideas that people have about the process, and it's very helpful to actually clarify some of the misconceptions. So I want to start with something that you've probably already experienced, maybe even today. Think about a time when you were completely absorbed in something. Let's say you were reading a book or you watched a movie or some reel with funny cats on YouTube. And you were so absorbed when maybe somebody called your name, you just genuinely didn't hear them, right? Or maybe you missed a stop on your bus, on your commute. That happened to me, by the way, more than once. It could be also sometimes you listen a piece of music, a song that makes you really stop what you're doing and just take you to your special place or to that memory. And it feels so real that it can make you emotional, right? It can sometimes make you laugh or get excited or cry. There actually is a real physiological response. Same like watching a movie, right? You get so absorbed and sometimes it's scary and your heart is actually beating. So that quality, that total observed presence, where sort of the analytical or evaluating part of your mind just kind of steps back, that is the closest to everyday experience of hypnosis. So you are not asleep, you you didn't check out, you you were actually more present than usual in a very focused direction. The bottom line is that we all have that capacity, to imagine something so vividly that your body actually responds to it as if it is happening, as if it is real. So that's not something quirky that daydreamers do. That's what we all do. Um, it's not actually even a weakness, I say. I think it's more of a strength. Especially Professor David Spiegel at Stanford University actually, I remember, makes that point that from the evolutionary perspective, you know, we are kind of vulnerable creatures because we are not that big, we're not that strong, we don't have claws or like natural armor. Or historically we didn't have it. So what we had though is imagination. So we had the ability to predict, to rehearse, to simulate, essentially to run a situation in our minds before it actually happened. And that is what kept us alive. It was important, right? To prevent from a predator tracking you. You had to predict. And that's what hypnosis is tapping into in a way. So it's not something that is unusual or magical or unnatural, but actually, in that sense, you can think about it as something very ancient, something in our biology, right? Something we developed because we needed it. So when somebody says that, or when they worry they can't be hypnotized, well, I say, can you get lost in a movie? Can you get lost in a book? Can you lie awake at night running a conversation that hasn't happened? Can you imagine maybe biting into a lemon right now and just feel your mouth like slightly salivating, right? So That is the capacity. It's already there. So all that hypnosis does is actually uses it intentionally. That is hypnosis. Not all of it, but the sense of it. That's what it is. And so you've actually been there many times. You didn't need anybody to put you there. You just drifted the way we all do, and you were there. So when people hear the word hypnosis, and a lot of people immediately think, pocket watch swinging and someone's telling me to sleep or making me cluck like a chicken in front of strangers. Or, I don't know, people sometimes have these scenes from every bad thriller where somebody gets hypnotized and they do something terrible and then they don't remember any of it. So I get it. I get where it comes from. Actually, I wish it worked like that sometimes because, come on, if we had that ability to just erase our memories that are uncomfortable, selectively delete the things we would rather not carry anymore, imagine the freedom, right? But that's not what hypnosis is. And honestly, even if it were, actually, I'm not sure erasure is what we would need because, in truth, the things that we most want to forget are usually the things that most need to be understood. But anyway, so all I mentioned here has very little to do what clinical hypnosis actually is. Clinical hypnosis, it's completely different, by the way, from stage hypnosis, which is something that you can see on these shows. Mm, they're essentially really two completely different things that share the same name. They are both real, but in a different way. So stage hypnosis, it is real, right? What happens there on those shows is actually happening. People are usually, I think, not acting it. But what are you watching is basically very specific performance context, and it works for very specific reasons that have nothing to do with, one person having some mysterious power over another. You can think about actually who volunteers, right, to go on stage for these hypnotic shows. So it's usually somebody who wants to be there, somebody who already agreed, right, to play along, to be a little entertaining, and just give audience a good time. So then the stage hypnotist, how it works is they run a series of quick tests called suggestibility checks. And essentially, that really quickly removes anybody who is not responding at all or not responding well. So what you end up with on that stage is basically a self-selected group of highly suggestible, highly motivated, socially primed people, right? In front of the crowd with kind of permission to do something that they wouldn't normally do. So you can see this is not really mind control. It's just a social psychology. And this is very well understood, actually. Clinical hypnosis, on the other hand, something I use in my work or hypnotherapists use, is something entirely different, right? So there is no performance. It's just me and you or your therapist and the particular quality of focused attention we just talk about. So it's a very structural, intentional process that is used in service of something specific, usually changing a response or loosening a belief, reaching the part of the nervous system that normally doesn't respond to just talking, right? So we're using it therapeutically with intention. And most importantly, we can rehearse the response that you actually want to have. Because here, the most fascinating thing I think about all of this is how your brain doesn't really distinguish between something that is imagined and something that is real. Um, like not in the way that you would think, because when you vividly imagine something, really imagining with detail, with feeling, then essentially your nervous system starts to respond to this as if it is happening. So your heart rate might change if it's something like um, emotional or intense. Your muscles, they respond. The same neural pathways actually activate. That is why when you wake up at night from a nightmare, let's say, you can feel your heart is pounding, right? A lot of the time. Or you might just kick the wall. Again, happened to me. But the fact is, like, nothing really happened, right? You were just lying in bed, but your body thought you were somewhere else. Maybe you were chased by a tiger or something, because your brain was running an experience, the simulation, as if it was real, and the body was responding. So that's essentially why athletes and musicians, by the way, they have known about this for decades, and it is being used as a mental rehearsal, right? Let's say a sprinter visualizing the perfect race, or pianist running through the piece in their mind. So the research actually shows that the brain activity when we do these things in our imagination is actually very remarkably similar to actually doing it. So there you are. And so in hypnosis, in that state of focused, observed attention that we are talking about, the let's say the critical property of the mind is stepping back. So you can actually rehearse being different. So you can run the version of you that actually responds to a situation calmly instead of the natural, normal response you had, which was unhelpful, which is maybe freezing. You can rehearse a version of you that is able to set a boundary, or instead of just giving in and collapsing or having an anxiety attack. You can rehearse a version of you that sits on that plane if you suffer from a phobia or fear. If you suffer with insomnia, you can rehearse a version that falls asleep easily, relaxing easily. We can train the body in a very remarkable ways. So then your nervous system starts to learn it, and it's no more a concept anymore. It's actually, once you do that in hypnosis, it's basically an experience the body, the brain had. And this is why we can work with beliefs, with responses, with patterns on the level where they actually live, and we can change them. For example, you might consciously know that if you're gonna have the presentation, you're not gonna die there, right? You know that if you suffer from social anxiety or performance anxiety. So you've told yourself that 100 times. But never mind, your hands are still shaking, your heart is going, there's this lump in your chest, and the body is experiencing stress response. That is because the belief, the real one actually, that says that something bad is gonna happen, that belief isn't really living into this conscious mind you can argue with. It's living somewhere deeper and a little older. It's underneath those other thoughts. And essentially, hypnosis can give you access to discover, make it conscious, and change it. So, just the last few things I want to talk about, because I think it matters. Firstly, hypnosis is not asleep, right? We just said. I want to make sure people understand that you are aware completely throughout the whole time. You can hear everything, the traffic outside, dog barking, someone moving, your own breathing. You hear everything, you remember everything, and you are not unconscious. Okay? It is not quite the same as meditation either, though. And people actually ask me that a lot. What is the difference between hypnosis and meditation if both of it is kind of focused attention, right? So they are similar, but I would say meditation is more about the quality of observing your mind, right? You notice a thought, say it's a familiar thought, maybe something about not being good enough. And in meditation, you sort of watch it and you don't follow it and you let it pass. So that, by the way, very useful. Hypnosis is a bit more directional. So you are not just watching the thought, but you're working with something specific. So instead of just noticing that thought about not being good enough, you are actually going to change it. You're going to loosen it and you're going to replace it with something that fits you better, something that you want better, right? Let's get hypnosis, get intention to it. And lastly, you cannot, and I stress, you genuinely cannot be made do something that's against your will or values. So you're not gonna suddenly confess something you didn't want to confess or hand over your bank details to me. No, again, this is entirely a myth that comes from stage hypnosis. So in clinical hypnosis, you are always in charge, always. It is the process that actually you are driving with your intentions. I'm just helping you. I'm just guiding you. I'm helping you to get there. But essentially, in that sense, all hypnosis is self-hypnosis because it is your brain, it is your mind. So I think that's about all on this first topic. In the next video, I'm gonna talk more about cognitive behavioral hypnotherapy and how that works and how hypnosis actually fits with that approach. So thank you for watching and see you in my next video.